Hello guys, I'm Flakes here. This video has been in development, or at least my thoughts, since the channel's conception. But before I start, I just wanted to bring up what this community has been able to do and been able to amass since this channel's creation. So last video just happened to be my second highest viewed video in channel history, so thank you guys for not only that, but for getting me to 600 total viewers and double subscribers. I know this is nothing in terms of comparison and for what I have planned for this channel, but it's still a great benchmark for things to come. So again, thank you guys. You clicked on this video initially, whether you're a returning viewer or you're a new viewer. You're probably interested in gaming and certain subcategories that go into entertainment of the player. Now, let me preface by saying this. It is a freezing cold take to say that immersion entails a better gameplay experience, but I think our conception of what immersion does for you, not only from a gameplay perspective, but post-retrospection stance is also skewed. In this video, I wanted to touch on a couple instances from these games here. This also serves as a giant spoiler warning for all of these said games, and show how different forms of immersion affects the gamer's perception of how they play games and why we play them. For this section, I think that I should disclaim that a lot of these games fall under all categories of immersion, which is what makes these games so great. But I think, personally, every single one of these categories has nuance that makes it so I can focus on certain games that aid in showing examples of said immersion. For this section of the video, I really wanted to focus on 3 games which I believe to be great examples of audio-visual immersion, those being Detroit Become Human, Cuphead, and Undertale, the game playing in the background. If I were to give my expedited summary about audio-visual immersion and its effects on a player, I would ask you, have you ever played a horror game and felt unease? Well, that's most likely because of the setting, which it's horror games for audio and visual cues that immerse the player. One of my personal favorite instances is from this upcoming scene from Detroit Become Human, where Marcus is in a junkyard. If I were to give a short expedited summary on why this ties in with immersion, this scene is so amazing because it immerses the player from the perspective of Marcus, and at this point in time, there's moments where the audio spikes, or the HUD is glitch, or it goes silent, and this alerts the player of the position that they're in the story. The other example I can think of is that perfectly encapsulates audio-visual immersion is from Undertale's first in-route boss fight, which is Omega Flowey. I know, a lot of things can be picked up from that video that may not be conveyed to the player without a giant word called context. At face value, it does look like a glob of chaos and pellets flying around and scream with insane visual eye candy. But with context, it becomes an amazing display of artwork and masterfully done audio showcases. At this point in the game, the player just watch what they believe to be their final obstacle to get back home die by the hands of Flowey. What made the Asgore fight so amazing is that we couldn't spare him. No matter how hard we try, we have to accept that our free will is gone, and in order to get through this problem, we have to do something we haven't done all game, which is to kill. And we contrast this with the fight with Asgore. We get this sorrowful audio that is conveyed to the player that Asgore is also hurting during this action, and maybe not acting out of his own will, but of his duty to the people. And we can't both win, and this is sad, and it conveys to the player that you don't always get what you want. Now I want you to contrast that with this. The player is immersed in this boss fight because of the juxtaposition. Also, to help that there's no segment of where you walk to the boss and engage, it happens right after. So you're slopped with this glob of chaos and audio-visual overload, and in my opinion, it's perfect audio-visual representation and ties into the narrative. Now, the last audio-visual representation is Cuphead. Now, Cuphead is a game I'm currently playing through, and I think the audio-visual immersion strikes the second that you open up the game, to the second that you beat the devil. A couple boss fights I think display the amazing audio-visual immersion are Dimji the Great, Ribby and Croaks, Sally's stage play, and the devil himself. I believe that the soundtrack does an amazing job at conveying the boss's personality, and for this game to be a bullet hell RPG, it gives a lot of bosses a lot outside the blinking projectile that they shoot, making each fight seem personal to not only their character, but to the games and its audio-visual immersion itself. Now, when discussing theatrical immersion in video games, I'll preface by saying the same thing that I prefaced beforehand. I believe that it is entirely possible that Red Dead Redemption 2 falls under gameplay immersion and setting immersion and audio-visual immersion, but this is a case scenario for me explaining on how different forms of immersion invoke a different feeling inside of every player that plays the game. My own personal takeaway from Red Dead Redemption 2 is it's best when it tries to tell a story with a lot of nuance. But I do think that a huge reason why this works is because of the setting and the set pieces that they use that almost feels theatrical at times. My favorite instances of set pieces from this game alone that aid in the audience's understanding of what they're playing is obviously the biggest set piece in the game, Braithwaite Manor. I like that when they directed the map, they made it feel like it was something gothic about what you were engaging in. And then when you get into this huge action set piece where you shoot them, you feel a sense of unity between the character and those around him. I think another set piece that Red Dead Redemption 2 perfectly nails is Saint Denis. This city is full of immersion, full of life, and that's why it is so immersive. For instance, the play that you go to with Mary Linton is completely optional. However, it fills in a void a lot of the audience has when they play video games, when they feel as if it's not personal enough, which is what Saint Denis has to offer when you're there in Red Dead Redemption 2. Another game I think that does theatrical immersion amazingly is Batman Arkham Knight. It immerses you in the city, and yes, I know that this can technically be setting. I believe it's more theatrical because you're introduced to this city through dialogue and through implications from cutscenes. Now, the reason why this section isn't so long is because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. There are thousands on top of thousands on top of thousands of media outlets telling you why these games are so amazing and why they immerse you. But I feel like there's certain nuances that people don't understand when talking about these types of games. You already know the character of Batman, yes, but why does Arkham Knight make you feel so in love with the character? It's because of how it immerses you theatrically. Oh, and it also helps that it has an entire trilogy before this, just mentioning that. One of the things that I think need to be conceptualized about gameplay immersion is that I think the gamer can suspend their disbelief if the gameplay panders to the narrative. I was recently in an argument with a good friend of mine about whether or not God of War Ragnarok or God of War 3 is better for the series, and he called God of War 3 a hack and slash, which he is objectively correct about. That's the style of the game. However, I think it's always important to emphasize why they made the gameplay decision. The gameplay decision is good because I'm playing as a god killer. If I'm playing as a god killer, I want to feel like I'm strong enough to, kill gods. There are games like Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost Recon Wildlands, which I can say that I don't think are good in their conception. However, it ties into the narrative well, and that's why people love the games. As the game continues, you become more dishonorable, and this obviously plays into the narrative and gameplay aspect and immerses the player. Ghost Recon Wildlands has you chasing down a Mexican cartel and taking down different subcategories, such as people that control, say, transportation or drug smuggling, and this is realistic to real life, so therefore players are immersed because they know this is something that they connect to on a personal and real world level. Now, before I talk about immersive setting in a good light, I wanted to talk about it in a bad way. What you are seeing on screen is a game that went from having a lot of nuance and a lot of realistic setting that made it interesting to a slop of absolute bullshit. I think this should be a lesson to everyone trying to convey a small, grounded storyline, to never go out of your proportions when it comes to creating these settings. It makes it unrealistic, it breaks all immersion, and instead of wondering, oh, this is cool, you wonder, how did we get here? And we see how that turned out for this game. If you want to play a single player led story that has a great setting, I always recommend to everyone that you should play Life is Strange. It's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but as an audience retention rate and the setting logically follows, as it has a supernatural twist but still stays grounded. Please, if you want a game with a great setting that's relatable to you and you're in college or high school, play Life is Strange. It will change your life. I know I like to ramble out during these end cards, and I'm just going to let the editing show it for itself here. This is going to be by far my longest video that I've ever created, and outside of Resident Evil and just liking to create content, this was one of the major reasons why I created this channel, to throw obligatory discussions out there about gaming that other people might find fun. Now, I know a lot of people most likely don't stick around past the first 2 minutes because our brains are mush nowadays, but if you are for some odd reason still watching in this video, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for listening to my opinion, and please tell me what you think it down in the comment section below. As for this discussion, I would love to see what other people think. I know that my subjective opinions on video games aren't the end all be all, so I would love to see different perspectives on gaming. With that being said, thank you for watching the video. Always check up on your mental health. I love you guys, and goodbye.